Hi everyone, I'm Glenda with SureFit Designs, whimsically known as Glenda the Good Stitch. In the previous video, I talked about pants that pull down your backside, because when I get questions like that and ladies ask, what do I do? Well, first of all, you have to understand why it happens. So now in this video, we're going to look at 5 different solutions or minor tune-ups that you can do to help remedy that situation. Now, I've got the SureFit Designs pants pattern all drawn off for you here. And for those of you who are new to SureFit Designs and seeing this perhaps for the first time, SureFit Designs offers a master pattern that is graded according to your body measurements. And it goes from 28 inches up to 62 inches around, which has a fairly large selection of sizes and measurement range. And so all that you're going to do is use your appropriate circumferences, mark in your specific measurement dots, and connect those dots together. That's, of course, why I call it your body blueprint. Now, let's just assume that you've got your pants blueprint done and you put the test pants on, and for whatever reason, your pants aren't long enough in the back crotch. And again, that previous video discussed those issues and why that might be happening. But let's assume that you really do need to add more length to the back of your pants. And so when we look at the crotch curve, we've got some alternative positions and places to add this extra length. And it could be that your pants just simply weren't measured long enough for you, or I should say your crotch wasn't measured long enough for you, and the back of the pant at the waist edge simply needs to come up some. And so I'll just use a circumstance and say that you're assuming that you need at least a ½ inch more of length. So I've just got my seam gauge. I'm going to measure up a ½ inch, and then what I will do is take the designing stylus and I'm going to connect from that new point out to the waist point in as smooth a transition as possible. And that's called truing, connecting a new point to an original point in the longest, smoothest distance possible. And then, of course, you would bring this line up like that. Now, before I go any further, I should also just say that this pattern does not have any seam allowances on it. It's called a strip down pattern, and before you can go ahead and test it, you've got to add your seam allowances, and that's what you do with the designing stylus and the slots that are provided. However, when I'm doing this demonstration, I didn't want a lot of lines getting in your way, and that's why I've only made one line here. So always know that this is a strip down pattern and that any modifications that we make, you would need to add seam allowances to. All right, another situation is that, no, your pants are sitting fine at your waistline, but perhaps it's pulling just a little bit on the front of your thigh. And people will often say, when I walk in my pants, I get a drag on the front of my thigh. Well, you might have a large thigh, but usually you don't need to increase the width of the leg of the front of the pattern. Usually what that's saying is that we need to give you a little bit more shelf length at the back of your pattern, because as you extend this shelf length out, that means that this whole piece of fabric is going to go underneath your buttocks a little bit more, or in a little bit more distance, and then it actually gives more length to the walking room in the front of your thigh. And so another place where you can add length to your back crotch is at the back crotch point number 2. So I'm going to bring this out a ½ inch. So this is a second alternative for you. And then you would take your designing stylus and simply true down into the inseam up to just somewhere around the knee area. So again, you've got a nice smooth transition going from your extended back crotch point down into the inseam. And yes, of course, this would be taken out like this. All right, so those are a couple of different ways to add length to the back of the crotch. Now, another way is to actually change the shape of the crotch curve. And you may remember our ancient Greek mathematician whose name was Euclid. He's the one that said that the shortest distance between any 2 points is a straight line. So if we call this point A and this point C, if I held the designing stylus like this and drew a straight line, obviously that's a shorter distance than when I come down and swoop around and then come out to point C. Well, in an exaggeration, as I've got in this illustration, if I swoop all the way into the interior and come back out, obviously I've made that line a lot longer. So I'm adding more length to that back crotch. Well, we wouldn't come in that much for our back crotch curve, but what you might want to do, and this would be dependent on, let's say that you've got a buttocks that is drooped and hanging just a little bit lower and your cheeks are dropped there. What I would suggest doing is coming in first of all with a pencil and just modifying this back crotch curve. And I'll often do this. I'll pencil it in and then I'll take a look at the shape and then I'll come back with the designing stylus and redo that shape. So when I take the designing stylus curvature, and this is where you would use for the back crotch curve, and it says it there, back crotch curve, then I'm just going to position this in place like this, and I'm going to true into the existing center back, and I'll come around this way and then out to back crotch point number 2, like that. Whoops, and I missed there, I missed the stylus. There we go, that's better. But I think you get the idea, and you can see that that line is actually going to be longer now because I have created a longer, deeper curve. And so those are 4 different ways. Excuse me, that's not 4 different ways, that's 3 different ways. Now, another way that you can do that is say, well, I don't think I need all the length at the top, or I don't think I need all the length at my crotch point. So you can actually split the difference and just put perhaps 1/4 of an inch up here and 1/4 of an inch right here. And so you can give a little bit to the top or a little bit to the bottom, or you can reshape that crotch shelf for yourself. It just depends so much on your body. Now we'll take a look at a 5th alternative. And for this one, I'm going to turn around and just talk about my backside a bit. Let's say that the back of your pants seem to be sitting fine here at your waistline, and they seem to be sitting fine in your crotch curvature, and it's not binding on your thigh, but where you've got your fullness is right in the middle of your buttocks, right in the middle of these cheeks, right here. So you're full this way. Well, then what you might need to do is actually split the pattern open in the interior of the back and open this up. And so now let's take a look at what would happen here. This is at crotch point number 1 that I actually started and I drew a line that is perpendicular to the straight of grain, and I went all the way across to the side waist, or the side point on the side seam. And this is actually going to become a pivot point right here. And again, remember I said this doesn't have any seam allowances on it, so this, you always want your seam allowance to be the pivot point. After you would get this completed, then of course you would add your seam allowances around. But now you take your scissors and you're going to cut from your crotch point number 1 out to your side seam. And I've pre-done that for the sake of ease in this demonstration. And then what you do is, I'll just remove these pins and I'm going to split the pattern, pivoting at the side waist, or I keep saying side waist point, at the side seam here. And you open this up as much as you think you might need. Now, how are you going to know how much you need? Well, one way to do it is you've gotten a pair of test pants already done, and that's what you're working from. That's how you know that they're feeling a little bit tight in the middle of your buttocks. And so you could actually just cut that test pant all the way across, let it spread open on your backside, and it will tell you how much you need there. But again, for the sake of this demonstration, I'll open this up maybe anywhere from 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch. And then I'll just pin this back in place. I've got a split that's here in the pattern, so what I need to do next is I need to take a piece of tracing vellum and I need to back this opening with the tracing vellum, and I'll put a pin here. But what you're going to want to do is come in with some tape and tape it down very, very well, like this. And one more to hold this in place. Now, the next thing that you'll need to do is true your center back. Let me get the right curve going here. So it would be something like that. So you can see that what that's done is it's added length to the back of the crotch curvature, but it's also added, call it length, in this direction as well. So you've got more fabric going up and over top of your buttocks cheeks in the middle of the pattern. And that might be totally much more comfortable on you. It just depends so much on what your body is like. Then, of course, you need to true this side seam here, because I've got a tiny little dip here, and it's not much of a truing, but it would be something like this. And then the next thing that you need to do is take your grain line and extend it up from the bottom. So the grain line does change in the top of the pant area here. So that is a fifth way now to remedy if you need a longer back crotch. And as I said earlier, so much of it depends on what your body is like and what you're going to be the most comfortable with. So if you've enjoyed this video, and again, I hope that you have, and I hope you've learned a few more things to add to your repertoire of sewing knowledge and fitting skills, I do invite you to join the SureFit Designs community if you haven't already. And you can do that in 3 easy steps. Number 1, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's SureFit Designs. And please make sure you like the video and make a comment. I love to read your comments. Number 2, go on over to surefitdesigns.com and subscribe to the newsletter, where you'll get all kinds of free gifts to get you started. And number 3, we now have a Facebook group page where home seamstresses from all over the world are getting together and asking questions and talking about SureFit designs and showing the projects that they've made. I know you're going to enjoy participating in that group, and I will look forward to seeing you there.